Hi everybody and good morning. Today we are covering topic 4, biological molecules. And before we start, let's check our prior knowledge first. So before, we should already have learned in year 7 and year 8 about the existence of chemical elements. And that chemical energy is contained within larger organic molecules. And if you have learned about chemical energy before, you know that it can be called the stored energy. And it's actually stored in between the bonds when you have molecules that are joined up together. And you should actually know stuff about enzymes a little bit and how enzymes work, and a bit of a simple understanding of the circulatory system in year 8. And the circulatory system is basically a system in your body, a set of organs and tissues that have a main purpose. And for the circulatory system, what their main purpose is actually to transport materials. And today we're going to learn about what kind of materials are you actually transporting throughout your body. So these are what is much more familiar to you, but this one might not be very familiar to you, but you could have already covered this part in chemistry. And so we are just going to have a check on pretty much everything here is related to what we're going to learn today. Our learning objective today is 4.1.1 to list the chemical elements that make up carbohydrates, lipids, fats, and oils, protein as well, and lastly DNA. So the term lipid here is another term to refer to fats and oils. So I hope that you guys can familiarize yourself with the term lipids now, which refers to fats and oils. So chemical elements and compounds. Let's try to do a little bit of a recap on what these two words mean. So in year 7 and year 8, we learned about matter. So we learned about the definition of matter, what is a molecule, what's an atom, and a particle. So matter itself, so this is talking about from big to small. Matter is anything that takes up space. It is made up of subatomic particles like atoms and molecules. So anything that takes up space is called matter. You are made up of matter. I'm made up of matter. Your phone is made up of matter because it does take up space, and it is made up of molecules and atoms. What is a molecule though? A molecule is when you have two or more atoms that are joined together. For example, you have here oxygen atom that is joined with a hydrogen atom and another hydrogen atom. And if you can recognize this is one molecule of water. An atom itself is made up of a proton, a neutron, and electrons. Sometimes there might not be neutrons, I think, but they should have protons, neutrons, and electrons, and that is the structure of one atom. And what is a particle? A particle is tiny bits of matter. So you can say a particle, it has different sizes, and it really depends. It can be a proton is a particle, a neutron is a particle, and an atom is a particle, and even molecules you can call that particles as well. So particles can be very, very small, but this is basically the definition of all of these terms. So molecules can be elements or compounds. So a molecule can be elements. It means that it has two or more of the same type of atom, and it's chemically joined together. And molecules can also be compounds. Compounds is when you have two or more different types of atoms that are chemically joined together. So this, for example, water itself is a compound because there's two types of atoms chemically joined together. And O2, oxygen, is made up of the same type of atoms, so it's called an element. Although it's a molecule, it's a element. And H2O, this is how you kind of write this down to represent water. Okay, so molecules. Remember, molecules can either be elements or compounds, and they are found in all living things. A biological molecule or biomolecule is a molecule that is present in living organisms. Remember that molecule means two or more atoms chemically bonded together. So these right here, fruits, a human being, and even insects, they all contain biological molecules. So anything that you can find, any molecule that you can find in living things, they are called biological molecule or biomolecule. What does the word nutrient mean? So learning about biological molecules is important for our future topic, which is to do with nutrients and human nutrition or animal nutrition. And nutrients are chemical substances in the food that we eat. For example, all of these are nutrients. These are all nutrients, and if you have a look, so iron, it is an element. Vitamin A is the molecule. I'm sure it's made of molecules. Potassium is an element. Vitamin C, calcium, protein, fiber, and carbohydrate. So these are all substances that, or chemical molecules that can be found in the food that you eat. So these are what we call nutrients. So carbohydrate, iron, vitamin A, calcium. So the whole apple here contains all of these chemical substances and all these nutrients and all of these biomolecules. That's why they say an apple a day keeps the doctor away, because it has quite a lot of nutrients that is good for your body. So there are 7 nutrition groups or nutrient groups, and how we remember this is Chigu Fatima plays the violin for my wedding. So this is the mnemonic for the 7 groups of nutrients or nutrition. Okay, carbohydrate, C, Chigu is carbohydrate. Fatima, F for fats or lipids, remember the word lipids. P for protein. V, violin, for vitamins. F4 is for fiber. The M is for minerals, and W, wedding, is for water. So these are the 7 groups of nutrients that you need to remember for animal nutrition. So this is what carbohydrate looks like. Fats actually look like that. Protein, vitamins, fiber, and minerals like iron is just an element, and you have water, which is a molecule. So having to look over here, human beings need nutrients. All living things need nutrients. And these are all things that you can find inside the living thing. So therefore, these are all biological molecules or examples of biological molecules. So firstly, let's talk about how molecules are formed. Molecules are formed when you have bonds that are formed between the atoms. There are different types of bonds. You have covalent bond, ionic bond, and hydrogen bond. These 3 bonds are the important bonds in biology. So today we're mainly going to focus on covalent bonding. So let's look at protein molecules first. Protein is a type of nutrient, and it is very important for our diet. And protein molecules are biological molecules made up of the elements carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, nitrogen, and sulfur. So how you remember this? We say chons. So CHONS. So protein molecules are made up of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and sulfur. Each protein molecule is made up of amino acids, so tiny molecules of amino acids. So this right here is one molecule of an amino acid. And you can see here you have carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, and right here R is R group can contain the sulfur molecule. Okay, so this right here, one whole molecule is called an amino acid. And when you have lots of these joined up together, then they make up a protein molecule. So just so you know, this is where your carbon, and you have hydrogen, you have oxygen here, nitrogen there, and sulfur actually is in this group right here. When many amino acid molecules are joined together by covalent bonds, they form what we call polypeptide chain. So let's say that this circle here is an amino acid. You have lots of amino acids and they are joined up by chemical bonds. So here's one bond here, another bond, third bond, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh bond. So all of these bonds join up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 molecules of amino acids. So we call this so here, what this circle refers to is literally this part here. This is an amino acid, and just simplified, I just made a circle, a picture of a circle there. So all of these, this whole thing, when you have molecules, so lots of molecules of amino acids joined together by covalent bond in between here, you call that a polypeptide chain. So this is a polypeptide chain. So those bonds linking the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 amino acids together, that is what you call the peptide chain. That's why when you have lots of amino acids joining up together, you call it polypeptide. Poly means many. Okay, so just looking over here, you also have bonds that are linking the amino acid elements that make up the atoms that make up the amino acid together, and that is also a hydrogen bond. And when bonds are formed, actually in between here, there's chemical energy that is stored in between all those bonds. So after a polypeptide chain is made, the protein is then folded to form protein molecules. So imagine it kind of like doing origami. So you have firstly amino acid molecules, and when you have lots of them joined up together, you get polypeptide chain. And if you make an origami of this and you fold them into a 3D shape, you call that a protein molecule. You're going to learn about folding a protein, for example, beta plate sheet and alpha helices. This is what you're going to learn in sixth form, so don't worry about it too much for now. Just want you to know that the fact that after you fold the polypeptide chains, you actually get a protein molecule. Proteins have 3D shape because they are made up of different folds. Okay, energy is stored in the covalent bonds that are holding atoms together in the form of molecules, and this is often called chemical energy. So here, there, all of those bonds that you can find, anything that is linking those molecules together, that contains chemical energy. And so that's why protein contains a lot of energy. So when you are looking for a nutritious food, something that can give you energy, you look for protein. You also look for fats and carbohydrates, actually. So we're going to look into that later. So how is this related to the circulatory system? The circulatory system is a network consisting of blood vessels, and the heart. And this network supplies tissues in the body with nutrients, oxygen, hormones, and also excretion part, which is the removal of waste. So the circulatory system is what helps us to transport the nutrients like protein to all parts of our body. So this is, sorry, I haven't changed it, but this should be, the topic is topic 4, not topic 5. So this was in 2021, but this is your current syllabus. So this is the learning objective that we're going to focus on today. Listing the chemical elements of carbohydrates, fats, proteins, but also DNA. Okay, so the step to success today, we're going to try to list out all the elements that are found in carbs, fats, and protein. We're not going to do this one because this was in the old learning objective. Okay, so what are the elements that can be found in carbohydrates? Carbohydrate molecules are biological molecules, and they are made up of the elements carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Carbohydrates mean carbon and water, so the hydrate part is water. Hydrate and carbohydrate comes from the fact that hydrogen and oxygen atoms are present in the ratio of 2:1, just like in water. So there are different types of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are divided into 3 categories. The first one is called monosaccharides. So the word mono here refers to one, and saccharides actually refer to sugar or being sweet. Glucose, fructose, and galactose are 3 monosaccharides. Disaccharides means, so the word di here means 2, saccharide means sugar or sweet, and we have maltose, sucrose, and lactose. The third group is polysaccharides. So just like how proteins are made, remember proteins are made when you have many amino acids linking together to form a polypeptide chain, and when the polypeptide chain is folded, it becomes protein. Polysaccharides is similar in a way that you have many, so saccharides as in sugar molecules. So when you have many of these monosaccharides joined up together, you got a polysaccharide. And the polysaccharides we are going to learn is starch, glycogen, and cellulose. So in terms of carbohydrates, we usually in diagrams and simplified diagrams, they are referred to this like hexagon shape. For protein, remember it was like circles, but it can be different types of shapes that are linked together. But for monosaccharides, they all look the same. They all look like that. So glucose, fructose, obviously fruits. This can be found in pretty much plants. Galactose is a type of monosaccharide that you can find in milk. With disaccharides, it means that you have 2 of these monosaccharides joined up together by a chemical bond. So maltose, in terms of maltose, it is when you get glucose plus glucose molecules together, you get maltose. Sucrose is found in plants, so obviously it's got to do with fructose. It's fructose and glucose joined up together, you get sucrose. In terms of lactose, it's glucose and galactose being joined up together, and that's how you find or form the disaccharide lactose. Polysaccharides mostly are being formed from glucose molecules. So it just really depends on the type of shape that they have, the structure that they have. So this right here, when you see it branching out, you have starch, and starch can be found in potatoes. Glycogen is another type of polysaccharide. It's made up of glucose as well, but this is the storage form of carbohydrate stored in animals. And in terms of cellulose, this is a type of polysaccharide. It is made up of glucose as well, but the structure is a little bit different, and cellulose can be found in all plants. They make up the cellulose cell wall. So remember, cell walls are made up of cellulose, and so they're actually made up of monosaccharides, glucose molecules that are joined up together. So here is when it comes to sugar, sorry. So you have glucose, and the structure looks like this. You have fructose that has a little bit of a different structure, and you can find fructose in fruits. And galactose has a little bit of a different structure. It's pretty similar with glucose. However, the one thing that is mainly different is, if you can see over here, this hydroxyl, is it hydroxide? Sorry, I don't remember. OH, I think it's hydroxyl. I need to check with the chemistry teacher. Okay, here you have hydrogen at the bottom, but here the hydrogen is at the top. The OH here is at the top, and so the bottom here instead. So that's the main difference between glucose and galactose. You also have 2 other types of sugar molecules called deoxyribose and ribose. And this is important in the future when we are going to look at DNA. Deoxyribose can be found in, for example, the DNA of a human being, and ribose is a type of sugar that is found in bacteria. So what are the main functions of carbohydrates? Firstly, respiration. You know that glucose is used during respiration. You break it down to release energy. And cellulose cell wall, that's another function of carbohydrate, to make the cellulose cell wall of plant cells. You can also convert glucose into amino acids and fat, and that's why, for example, if you eat too much food with carbohydrate, you can also convert that into fat molecules. Another thing is that, remember, so you have sugar molecules like deoxyribose, so that can be formed. So that type of carbohydrate can make DNA that you can find in human beings. And to synthesize lubricants, for example, to make mucus, and this is very important when you are sick. Mucus helps to trap the bacteria and trap also viruses, and it traps all those bad things and try to remove it from your airway passages. And also another function of carbohydrate is to make nectar. So I brought this video to you guys because if you can see here, you have all of these molecules here, and it's actually pretty accurate. This music video is accurate. The fact that it is showing you bits and pieces, and you know the song is called DNA, and these are the structure of parts and structure of DNA actually. So DNA, what is DNA made up of? DNA is made up of, so if you're talking about the bits of DNA, the subunit, the basic subunit, the monomer or basic subunit is called nucleotide. So this one whole bit right here, DNA is made up of lots of nucleotides that are joined up together. And what is a nucleotide composed of? It is made up of a phosphate group right here as a circle, and you have 5C sugar. So remember the sugar from before. So if you look over here, hexose and pentose, so this is what we mean by 5C sugar. It means that it's made up of 5, it has 5 carbon, that's why it's called 5C sugar, deoxyribose, and then you have a base, a nitrogenous base right here. So this one whole molecule here is called a nucleotide, and we have many nucleotides joined up together, you make DNA. So this is a nucleotide, another type of picture of a nucleotide. The base itself right here, so remember the nitrogenous base, it can be made up of different types of nitrogenous base called adenine, cytosine, guanine, or thymine. And if you see here, these bits, they are joined up together, and this long thing right here is called a DNA. So another simplified diagram is just having to look at it not in a helical form. Helix is kind of like when you kind of twist it. So this is in a helix form, but this is like in a 2D form that is easier for us to look at. So remember this one whole part right here, that is a nucleotide, and you have many of them here joined up together. So DNA is formed in a double helix. You have 2 chains. So you have one chain here and another chain here. And you have 4 types of DNA bases called adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. So what happens is that the A pairs with a T and the C pairs with a G. So if this is a T, that means this is an A. If this is a C, that means that's a G. G, that's a C. A, that's a T. DNA stores the information required to make proteins. So this is important to tell your body and your ribosomes, especially your ribosomes, how to make a protein molecule. And you actually know how to make protein molecules now. You have to join up amino acids together to firstly form a polypeptide chain and then have it folded to make a protein molecule. But how does your body cells get that information? And so they get it from this DNA. So if you have heard this word genes before, when you're like, oh, it's in my genes, it is talking about a section of DNA. So it means like a part of the DNA that has the code for that protein that is a gene. So if we're looking at it in a bigger picture, this right here refers to an animal cell. You have your nucleus, and inside the nucleus is, all the information that contains to control all of the activities of the cell, and that is your DNA. So DNA looks kind of like this, but when it is condensed, it can be formed what we call a chromosome. So this is when you condense all that bits of information, the DNA, together. And if you unravel this and you unravel it, and finally you get your DNA double helix. Okay, next, our last part is about elements that can be found in fat molecules. Fat molecules are biological molecules that are made up of the elements carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And unlike carbohydrates, fat contain less oxygen in proportion to hydrogen. So let's compare carbs and fat. So, for example, glucose, that can be found in honey, and triglyceride, which is beef fat. So it contains CHO. It also contains CHO. So these are made of the same type of element. However, you can see here the ratio is 2:1, but here the ratio is actually much more bigger. It's more hydrogen compared to oxygen in terms of fat. Now that we have learned everything, we've learned about the elements found in protein, starch, and fat. All the biological molecules, remember that biological molecules are molecules that are found in living things, and they always contain carbon and hydrogen. Protein molecules contain the elements CHO and S, and that is carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and sulfur. And carbohydrates and fat molecules contain these elements, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. However, the difference between carbohydrates and fat is that carbohydrates have the ratio of hydrogen and oxygen in 2:1, and fat has much more hydrogen than oxygen. So that's pretty much everything to do with the chemical elements found in carbohydrates, protein, fat, and also in terms of DNA as well. I am going to show you guys a worksheet after this, so that's all for today, and I'll see you guys really soon. Have a good day. Bye.